Joined right now by Mark Tate. He is a trial attorney. Mark, thanks so much for being with us as we, break down all the latest in what the FBI said today in the Brian Laundrie search. What were your key takeaways from what the FBI said?
Well, I think it's interesting that really the FBI has to kind of couch their words very carefully, because it's still an active investigation with regard to the murder, the strangulation murder of poor Miss Petito out west. And so they really don't want to start giving away facts that and clues that may start alerting people. I think there are a lot of concerns. You know, we don't know whose remains they are. We don't know whose notebook that was. We don't know what was specifically in that notebook. Is it a confession? Is it a suicide note? And just because there is the death of Mr. Laundrie doesn't mean that the Petito murder is solved. We don't know what else was found in that autopsy report, what the coroner had to say about what else was found on the body. Are there bite marks? Was there DNA? Has there been a DNA match? What are the fingerprints? What other injuries are there? We don't know that. And again, I think what we should take away from this is that the FBI is conducting a skillful, obviously excellent investigation when they find human remains that have been submerged for some period of time. What period of time? We don't even know that. I think that they are being careful about what information they're going to use to get warrants. There may be a need down the line, for example, to get to search the parents for DNA, to make a DNA match to the remains that they found in the formerly submerged swamp area. I am concerned, and I know that Dog the Bounty Hunter says that he didn't want to obstruct the FBI's search or the other parties involved in the search. But, you know, we have a private individual who is chasing someone who we're pretty sure, at least we know, is involved in a traumatic accident. Mm-hmm. And the goal here of those searching for Laundrie was to find him alive. And if he has more people who are not trained professionals that know how to take people down without scaring them into suicide or running them into a place where they're going to die, I think that can be obstructionist. And I know that that may not thrill Dog the Bounty Hunter to hear, but I'm not so sure that turning loose a TV bounty hunter into a wildlife refuge is necessarily the best thing to do. I know there was some concerns about there being temporary flight restrictions over this wildlife refuge. There's nothing ominous about that. The only thing that happened is the FAA said we don't want to have drones and news helicopters overhead while the FBI and others involved are trying to conduct a forensic examination of a delicate scene where remains have been found.
I have a couple questions for you. I think that's really interesting, an interesting point about Dog the Bounty Hunter and the role that he's played in this. My big question is about the parents, Chris and Roberta, because they showed up early morning to the Carlton Reserve, went seemingly directly to the place where they ended up finding the human remains, finding the backpack, and finding the notebook. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, you know, we know that this is a family that apparently has enjoyed that particular wildlife refuge. My perception is that they know where their boy was. They probably were hoping that he was not dead, but I think they knew where he was. I think that the parents are interestingly trying to protect their child, as anyone would. Not to say they're involved in any kind of obstruction or anything illegal in any way. They're well represented, and they've clearly played their representation and worked that appropriately. Obviously, it raises suspicions. Obviously, there will be questions to be asked. However, as a trial lawyer, I'm going to tell you that I think that their lawyer has demonstrated excellent lawyerly skills in making sure that his people, his clients, do not speak to the police. And I know that sounds brutal. That sounds like something that, oh my gosh, how can you not speak? But remember, we have a constitutional right not to speak to the police. And just because you decide not to speak to law enforcement now doesn't mean you can't change your mind and go talk to them later. And so while it may seem infuriating and frustrating to us late or to some lay people, the fact is that when you hire a lawyer, when you hire somebody like me, my job is to protect and his job is to protect their rights and freedoms and liberties. And that's what he's doing.
You know, Mark, if the remains are ID'd as Brian Laundrie's, what does the investigation look like after the fact? Is it over?
Well, it's an unsolved murder right now of Miss Petito. We know she died by homicide. We know that she was strangled to death. Just because her boyfriend is found dead in a swamp doesn't mean they've solved a murder. And I think that they would certainly, the law enforcement officials will certainly want to continue to pursue any leads. You know, it leaves lots of questions to be answered. We don't know if Laundrie was subjected to some kind of, I don't know, horrible circumstance out in the wilderness and was terrified and think he's running from somebody. We don't know who killed her. And I think, and I would hope, and I believe the Petito family deserves an accurate, thorough, and sifting investigation of who killed her and get an answer to that and make sure that we have an idea and are reasonably certain that Mr. Laundrie killed her if he's the one. And if he's not the one who killed her, we need to find out, and the Petito family deserves to find out who actually killed their daughter.
Yeah, and I mean, more is going to come out, obviously, with the medical examiners being there. There's going to be an autopsy that's being done. And again, we want to couch all of this with the fact that it's not confirmed it's Brian Laundrie yet. But if it is Brian Laundrie, do you think that the timeline is going to make a big difference in this case as well? Because it's going to reveal how long those human remains have been there. And they've been searching for a long time.
Yeah, it's been a lengthy search. You know, submerged remains, it's difficult to time how long they have been underwater. I think that a coroner, a medical examiner, a forensic pathologist can come reasonably close about how long the body has been submerged and lifeless. And that's not going to clear up the timeline sufficiently, I'm afraid, for a lot of folks, but you know, it'll tell us whether he went into the wildlife refuge with dying in mind, or possibly did he go in there with an escape in mind. If he was going in there and the remains clearly have been underwater for a long time, I think he's going in there with suicide in mind. If the recently deceased and they don't show much degradation, it may have been just simply he lost his bearings, lost his wits, and was panicking at night. And honestly, if you think about it, you know, it's a wildlife refuge. It's not like there's a, you know, Kmart right around the street or a 7-Eleven to go pick up a chili dog. He's got to provide for himself 100%, and it gets dark. It gets dark in the wilderness. And anybody who spent time roaming around the desert like we have, you find out that it does get really dark and it can be bleak and lonely. And I think that, you know, he may not have meant to kill himself. It could well have been an accidental death while he's trying to escape. But I think that you're right. Securing the timeline and what happened when with regards to his death could help us understand whether he was running to get away or running to die.
All right, trial attorney Mark Tate, we appreciate your expertise and insight in this. We'll be definitely speaking again. We do want to